falta una silla. Por Laini en medio. We're missing una silla. Estoy llenísimo. You're in the middle, please.
Are you having in the next chair?
Yes.
¿Quieres la silla?
Sí, porfis, porque somos tres. And you can sit in the middle.
Thank you.
Gracias.
No por nada, adelante.
Sorry, lady. This is for you to listen to. Just make sure that you talk right on.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Here, this one is for you.
Okay.
Okay, sí. And this is your one.
Buenas tardes. A nombre del Tecnológico de Monterrey, reciban la más cordial bienvenida a la presentación del libro Saga, hija de HUMO y Hueso de Laini Taylor, evento que forma parte del programa cultural de la 25ª Feria Internacional del Libro Monterrey 2015. Para esta presentación del libro, tenemos el honor de contar con la presencia de Laini Taylor, Mariana G. y Clau Reads Books. Karau es una estudiante de arte de 17 años que vive en Praga, pero ese no es su único mundo. A veces, Karau desaparece en misteriosos viajes para realizar los encargos de Brimstone, el monstruo quimera que la adoptó al nacer. Tan misteriosa resulta Karau para sus amigos como lo es para ella su propia vida. ¿Cómo es que ha acabado formando parte de una familia de monstruos quimera? ¿Para qué necesita su padre adoptivo tantos dientes, especialmente de humanos? Y ¿por qué tiene esa recurrente sensación de vacío, de haber olvidado algo? De pronto, empiezan a aparecer marcas de manos en las puertas, señal de que la familia de Karau corre grave peligro. Karau tratará de cruzar al mundo quimérico para ayudarles, pero es perseguida por los serafines. Entre ellos se encuentra Akiva, un ángel arrebatadoramente hermoso al que Karau está unida de forma que ni ella misma puede imaginar. Les recordamos que esta presentación se está transmitiendo en vivo y queda grabada en megustaleerenlafil.com. A continuación, cedo la palabra a nuestros invitados.
Bueno, hola, muy buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a la presentación de Laini Taylor. Me presento muy rápido. Yo soy Clau y mi canal es Clau Reads Books y hablo de libros en YouTube. Y aquí tenemos a Mariana González y su canal es I Am Unbroken Girl. Y por supuesto, Laini Taylor, la autora de la trilogía Hija de HUMO y Hueso. Se nos pidió que Mariana y yo dijéramos algunas palabras sobre los libros, pero no se preocupen, no vamos a hablar demasiado porque sé que quieren escuchar a Laini. Yo nada más quiero decir que mi acercamiento con la trilogía fue hace poco. Yo le tenía un poco de miedo a los libros porque yo veo a muchos booktubers y todos decían que el mundo que Laini Taylor creó era muy intimidante, muy grande. Decían, es un poquito difícil de entender y yo decía, pues no sé. Pero empecé a leer el primer libro y la forma en que Laini Taylor escribe es maravillosa. Me encanta porque es muy mágica, muy lírica y todo te lo hace imaginártelo en tu cabeza muy bien, con mucho detalle. Entonces no siento que batallé mucho para meterme al mundo. De los tres libros, me gustan mucho los tres, pero creo que mi favorito es el primero porque me gusta mucho que el ambiente se siente muy mágico, muy misterioso, todo muy bonito, de la chica con pelo azul, los ángeles, las quimeras. La tienda de Brimstone para mí es lo mejor. La tienda de Brimstone, los deseos, los dientes. Yo estaba leyendo eso y fue de, wow, de verdad quisiera que ese mundo existiera. A mí me encantaría poder pedir los deseos, tener las piedras, todo estaría genial. El collar de Karou, de las piedritas, yo lo quiero. No sé por qué Karou le hacía el feo, porque sería lo mejor tener uno. Y lo que noté es, mientras iba leyendo más y más los libros, me di cuenta de que esa magia del primer libro, tan inocente y pura, se fue perdiendo un poco, porque el segundo y el tercer libro son muy desoladores, muy difíciles. Y yo incluso en mi reseña que escribí del segundo libro en Goodreads, puse que se me hacía que era un libro juvenil, pero tenía escenas que no eran demasiado juveniles. He leído muchas novelas juveniles y muchos libros que no son juveniles con escenas fuertes, pero de libros juveniles, algunas escenas de las que Laini escribió en su segundo y tercer libro se me hicieron muy fuertes, muy impactantes. Algunas me dejaron en shock y sintiendo náuseas y cosas muy feas. Entonces me sorprendí mucho porque son libros juveniles con muchas capas y capas y capas. Y para mí fue impresionante leer los tres libros. Los leí seguidos Fue un viaje increíble, me encariñé mucho con los personajes. Creo que mis favoritos son Brimstone y City. Son lo más bonito de la vida. Y sí, estoy muy contenta de poder estar aquí presentando a Laini. Soy como su mega fan, entonces estoy muy emocionada. Y pues les doy la palabra a Mariana.
¿Qué puedo decir yo que Clau ya no haya dicho, verdad? Gracias, Clau. Pero bueno, la verdad, mi acercamiento con el libro fue totalmente inesperado. Yo vi el libro con su bella portada, la verdad. Las portadas de los 3 libros son hermosísimas. Y entonces me llamó mucho la atención de lo que trataba. Y dije, a ver, quiero leerlo. Y me dejé sorprender. La verdad, cada uno de los personajes son súper especiales y súper originales. O sea, ¿cuándo habías leído algo sobre eso? No, es algo totalmente distinto. Y bueno, la verdad no quiero entrar más a detalles, porque yo sé que todos los que están aquí ya leyeron HIJA de HUMO y HUESO, ya leyeron los 3 libros, así que ¿a quién vinieron a escuchar? A ver, ¿a quién? Así que bueno, les doy la palabra a Laini para que se presente y hable con ustedes.
You guys make me nervous. I haven't prepared words to say, and let me take those off. I haven't prepared words to say, and really, I'm better writing on paper than I am speaking in person, so I get nervous. And I just wanted to tell you that even before my first trip to Mexico last year, when I went to the FIL in Guadalajara and when I went to Mexico City, I already knew that the fans here were really extraordinary, because I know so many of you from Twitter, and I know that you're extremely passionate about the story, and I already felt really connected to you. But then when I came to Mexico, it was even so much more extraordinary than I could have expected, and the best book events I've ever done in the world have been here in Mexico. So you guys are really special to me. Thank you so much for reading and for coming here. And it's such a pleasure for me. So thank you so much. Thank you.
La dinámica de esta plática va a ser más como un Q&A, preguntas y respuestas. Entonces, ahorita nosotros le vamos a hacer algunas preguntas a Laini y lo vamos a pasar por si alguno de ustedes le quiere hacer una pregunta. Entonces, la primera pregunta que tengo aquí es, ¿cómo fue que la idea de los libros se te ocurrió inicialmente?
Okay, well, I've told this story a lot of times, and so maybe you've heard it somewhere before, but I had, when this story appeared first through 2 characters, unexpectedly, I had been trying to write another book at the time, and it was a book about ballerinas on another planet. And for some reason, it really wasn't working out very well. And I was having a really bad time. The characters refused to come to life. The world wasn't interesting. I couldn't make a story that I could enjoy. So I sort of started to hate writing a little bit. And one day, I really needed to have some fun. So I thought, I'm going to write anything. I'm going to write just something for fun. And I didn't know what that would be, but it appeared on the page, this blue-haired girl talking to her father, arguing with her father, and her father wasn't human, and that was a surprise to me. And he was wearing a wishbone around his neck that she wasn't allowed to touch. And he dealt in teeth for some reason. I didn't know why. And they were so instantly real and alive to me in a way that just is so unusual for me. That doesn't usually happen when I'm writing. So it felt like a gift, and I was so excited about these characters. And there was no story yet. There was just Carew and Brimstone and the wishbone and the teeth. And so from there, I had to figure out, what could their story be? And it just became a very intuitive journey of discovering their story. I never knew the whole thing in advance. I figured it out as they did, I guess you could say. And it was about 5 years of my life I worked on this trilogy, and it was it was really unexpected. When I sat down to write that day, I could never have imagined what it would become. So that's where it came from.
como ya había mencionado, otra de las cosas que más me gusta de tus libros, Laini, es la construcción de mundo. Y quisiera saber más o menos cómo le hiciste para construir un mundo tan vasto y tan grande, porque en el primer libro empieza, como dije, muy mágico y muy puro, y conforme van pasando los libros se vuelve muy grande, enorme y muy desolador. Entonces quisiera que nos contaras un poco de cómo fue esa transición, cómo se te ocurrió todo eso.
Yeah. Again, thank you. It didn't happen all at once. I didn't plan it from the beginning or know how big it would get. There's a quote by an American writer whose name I can't remember right now, but it's something like, writing a novel is like driving a car at night. You can only see as far as your headlights, but you can make it the whole way like that. And so I think for me that was really true. As the books grow, the world gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but if I had tried to imagine the whole thing from the beginning, there's no way I could have. It would have been too intimidating, but also I feel like engaged in something like this over so many years, your imagination can't come up with in 1 week what it can over the course of 5 years. So it's a process of creation that takes a lot of time. So the world building is the same way. I would what's happening up here? Hold on to everything. That it had to grow spontaneously as the story. The narrative was always the primary thing, the plot, and then the world would take shape around the plot. So it was really fun. I love creating, I love world building. I think so many fantasy writers and readers, that's really where the magic is creating a place that you'd like to imagine living in or being in. So it was always a joy. Yeah.
Gracias. Otra pregunta que tengo es, ¿cuál fue el personaje que más disfrutaste escribiendo y también cuál fue el personaje más difícil de escribir?
Oh, the most difficult too. Well, Carew is always the most important, and for that I think that she was sometimes the most difficult because, the whole story really had to rest on her. So, even though she seemed fully alive from the beginning, I still had to create a story arc. And so sometimes it was challenging, but I wouldn't say anyone really, well, Akiva, I guess, took it was a little harder to create because I wasn't sure exactly who he was at the beginning. And so he had to be developed. But the most fun, that's easy because Zuzana was always the easiest to write. As soon as she would appear in a scene, it would just start to sparkle a little bit. And her dialogue was always just came really easily and naturally. And so, maybe she's somehow my alter ego, or she says the things that I wish I could say.
Ok, bueno, aplausos, por favor. Yo tengo una pregunta curiosa. Si tuvieras el collar de Carew, ¿qué pedirías?
Her necklace isn't really worth very much. So I think that her idea of making people itch it would come in handy a lot. You're waiting in a long line at the bank or something. I don't know. Of course, if I had a Gabriel, I would also want to fly. So I've had this, I've spent way too much time thinking about flying, and in I think all my books there's flying in some way. And the question that comes up in very serious discussion is, if you could fly, would you rather be able to just fly like Carew or like Superman, or would you rather have wings? So I'm curious to see a show of hands. If you would have wings, raise your hand. Okay. If you just want to be able to just fly like Superman. I was like pretty 50-50, about half and half. Yeah, so of course, it would be much more practical to not have wings, but you would have to alter all your clothing. You have to sew all your shirts so that you could have room for your wings, and It'd be hard to drive a car because where would those things go? And there's all these, it would really, and you'd only be able to sleep in a couple of different positions, but I would still have wings because they're so cool. So I think the people who chose wings are the more romantic, maybe, and the ones without wings are more practical. But of course, we all want to be able to fly. I think, unless maybe you have fear of heights.
Pues uno de mis personajes favoritos es Brimstone y me gustaría que me contaras un poquito de cómo vino la idea de él y cómo la fuiste desarrollando y tal vez si algún día piensas escribir algo sobre él, su pasado o algo así. Me gustaría mucho que algo así sucediera.
Oh.
Please.
Did I hint at that? I said I would love to write his history, but I don't know if it will ever happen. Who knows? I'm a slow writer, and it's hard to write all the things that I want to write. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? I don't have a super clear idea of it. It would take a lot of creation, of going back in time to the history of the Seraphim and Chimera and this dark time that was the start of their war. And it would be really interesting, but I think it would be also difficult. So it's a little intimidating, but maybe someday. Yeah.
Esta pregunta sé que es difícil y ya lo respondiste, pero me gustaría saber por qué, ¿cuál de las quimeras es tu favorita?
I mean, which character or what kind of chimera I would be?
No. ¿Las dos?
Okay. Which of the chimera is my favorite? I don't know. I mean, I really love Ziri, of course. And absolutely, if I could be a chimera, I would be a Kirin. I would be like Madrigal and Ziri. That's easy. I created the kind of chimera I would want to be. So, and the horns, right? Yeah, and I don't know if some of you have read the origin story that was published online recently. That was the first day that I ever wrote Carew and Brimstone. And I can't remember if it was in there. I only published part of it, but in that first day of writing, Carew is arguing with Brimstone that she wants antlers for her birthday, like real antlers growing out of her head. And she's just trying to get a rise out of him. But, again, the practicalities of that, he points out to her that she would probably put people's eyes out on the subway. And, it would be really not, but it would be, she just argues that it would be really cool. So, yeah.
Otra pregunta que tengo es que por ahí leí algo de película, que va a haber película de Hija de Humo y Hueso. Entonces, me gustaría que nos contaras un poquito lo que sabes o lo que te permiten decir acerca de eso.
We spent a lot of time over the last couple years in development with Universal Pictures and Joe Roth, and we came very close twice, 2 different times, to getting the movie with different directors and different screenplays, and really it was a lot of effort, but it never came together quite right yet. So right now we're just taking a breather and begin again and hopefully find the right team this time. So I have hope, but it's a really complicated process, and most books never make it to film, even if they try. And, even if the studios spend a lot of money, it's still, it's just really tricky. So I'm hopeful, but, mainly I just have to focus on writing my next project and not worrying too much about the film.
Otra pregunta que tengo es, cuando empezaste a escribir la trilogía, ¿ya tenías el final en tu mente? ¿Ya sabías cómo querías que acabara? ¿O cambió la idea en el transcurso? ¿O se te ocurrió mucho después? ¿Cómo fue que decidiste el final de la trilogía?
Well, when I started writing it, I didn't really know what it was going to be, so I didn't know how it would end. when I started writing it, Akiva wasn't even in the story yet. It really began with Brimstone and Carew. It was a father-daughter relationship before it was a romance. So of course I couldn't know, how it would end. But as I went along, I had an idea of the kind of ending I wanted, but I didn't know exactly. For me, the difficulty is if I have an idea of how I want something to go, I can't outline it. I have to find the character's path along the way, and every step of the way trying to make sure it feels authentic, like every choice the character makes feels like the real choice that they would make. And so sometimes I think if you outline a story or you decide in advance what's going to happen, then you feel you're forcing your characters to do things that might be unnatural. So for me, that was, even though before writing this trilogy, I would have thought I had to plan it out, it never worked. Even if I tried to plan it, I couldn't figure out what they would do. So it had to become an intuitive process. So I would have an idea that I was working towards, and it might not be the ending, but it was the next big thing that was going to happen, and I had to figure out how to get there. So I just did that all the way through. And hoped it takes a lot of faith, I think, working that way to imagine that you will get it to go where you want it to go and still feel that you've honored the characters and the choices that they would make. So, yeah.
De los 3 libros, ¿cuál es tu favorito?
Well, I mean, I always hope that my most recent book will be my favorite. I hope that will always be true, because if it's not, then I think then it must have failed in some way for me. So, so far that's always been true. I've always, the newest one has always been my favorite, and I hope that will always be true. But of course there will be always a place in my heart for Daughter of Smoke and Bone, because it was such a special, sort of felt like such a gift that those characters came to me the way they did. And it was so fun to write. And it also, I realized later, not while I was writing it, but I realized later that I was really writing the book that I wanted when I was 17 years old. And that Carew was really, the character was sort of a gift for myself at that age. So yeah, it's really special for me.
Ay. Si tuvieras la vida de Carew por un día, ¿qué harías? Si fueras tú ella.
What? I don't know. What would I do? I'd go to Poison Kitchen and hang out with Susanna. I'd do some really awesome drawings, probably, because that's obviously why she has the ability, is because I wish that I did. She's really a wish fulfillment character in so many ways. And I guess I would fly. Depends on where in the story we are. Like Carew after she can fly, Carew in Aretz, Carew with Akiva. Well, then that's a whole different story. No.
Thank you. A mí me llama mucho la atención cómo describes todos los lugares que escribes en tus libros. Entonces quería saber si habías visitado Praga, Marruecos, o cómo fue que, o sea, tú los escribes y haces que nosotros los conozcamos a través de letras, y eso se me hace muy bonito. Entonces quisiera saber si los conoces, o también por qué decidiste que la historia fuera allí, en esos lugares.
Okay. Thank you again for such nice words. The first day that I started writing Carew and Brimstone, before it was a story, I think that she lived in New York. And then when I started to develop into a novel, I had to decide really where she would live. And I had been to Prague twice, and one in 96, when it was really just beginning to be open after, communism. And it was very different then than it is now. It wasn't so touristy yet. And then I went again in 2004 with my husband, and we were researching a graphic novel that we wanted to do together that was a vampire story. My first book was a graphic novel from Image Comics that my husband illustrated, and it was called The Drowned, and it was about witches. And we were driving home from San Diego Comic-Con back up to the Pacific Northwest, and it's a long drive, right? So we were talking about our next book, and it was going to be this vampire story. And this was before Twilight, so it still seemed like a good idea. And along the way, we were thinking of where it would be set. And I think our first thought was Manhattan, that Manhattan had been taken over by vampires. Now this idea seems like it's been done a million times or something, but at the time it seemed really cool. But then when we were talking to my best friend about the setting, she's like, why New York? You guys should go to Prague, go research it in Prague. And we were like, oh my God, that's such a good idea. Because we'd been starving art students for a long time. We met in art school and we didn't have, we were students, we didn't have a lot of money. And it was just beginning to be a time in our life where we could think about traveling. So it sounded really compelling, the idea of going to Prague to research a book. So we did it, and it was amazing. We went for 10 days. And we stayed and we rented an apartment right behind the main church in the square. And we spent 10 days walking around deciding where the vampires would hunt in Prague. And it was amazing. And it really was such a great setting. But we never did that book. We got home and I had some interest from an editor in my first novel that was unfinished at the time. So I turned my attention to finishing that. And the vampire graphic novel just died away. So then, come forward, was it like 5 years or 6 years after that when I started writing this, all the research from that trip was just sort of still waiting to be used. I'd really looked at Prague as a setting. And the thing that's so great about it is that it's a real city where people live and teenagers go to school and fall in love and all these things. And yet it also really feels like it's something out of a fairy tale, but kind of a dark Gothic fairy tale, because it has this deep history of magic and the arcane, and it's very strange. And a lot of weird things have happened there, like, history of alchemy and the golem of Prague. And so it seemed like you could have both worlds. You could have a contemporary story about real teenagers and also kind of a fairy tale. So it was really perfect. I didn't get to go back again to research at that time. So I haven't been back since 2004, I think, or 5. But I really would like to go. And then with Morocco, I was obsessed with Morocco at that time, mostly because I had found a blog of an expat American who was living in Morocco and building a house. And it was really, she traveled a lot and her photos were amazing. And so I was really interested in Morocco, and I hadn't been there. And I went after I finished writing Daughter of Smoke and Bone, when it was being edited. My family, my husband and my daughter, who was a baby at the time, we went to Morocco and traveled around. And so I was able to sort of see if I'd gotten it right. And I felt like I didn't need to make any changes, so that was good. But over the course of doing that, I discovered the setting for the second book, the Kasbah, which if I hadn't gone on that trip to Morocco, I don't, I think the series would be really different, because I don't know that I would have had the idea for the Kasbah, and that really shaped everything. So, yeah.
Thank you. He escuchado que dicen que los autores aman a todos sus personajes, y quería preguntarte si te pasa lo mismo, si también amas a personajes como Tiago o Yael.
Well, there are some characters that are impossible to love, like Jael. But, really, there's really no redemption in him or anything to love. But he's still fun to write. The bad guys can be more fun to write in some ways. But Thiago, yeah, I do feel a lot of compassion for him, because I feel like Thiago, for me, is an example of everything that they're trying to prevent. He's a result of a war going on too long. He was a hero at one time of his people, but he has gone through so much that he's beyond redemption now. And I think the idea is that if they continue the way they're going in Eretz, everyone will be beyond redemption. There's no way you can keep your soul alive if you're just at war for so long and everyone's a soldier. And so I do feel like Thiago is a very tragic character. He shouldn't have been that way. And there is glimpses of humanity in him, but he had gone too far. So I do find compassion for him. And I think Razgat, he's a tragic character too, but I think he was never a very good person, even before the tragedies that, befell him, which were pretty awful. So, but he was always really fun to write too. Yeah.
Y yo creo que esta ya es la última pregunta por parte de nosotras para poder pasar a las preguntas del público. Y nada más quisiera saber si podrías contarnos un poco sobre tus próximos proyectos, si estás escribiendo algo o si piensas escribir algo.
Sure. Yes, I am working on another book right now, and it's not in the same world, but it's not. I mean, it's still high fantasy. It's actually set in another world, unrelated to. So there's no connection with Earth in this book, and it will be out next fall in English. So I'm not sure how long before it's in Spanish. And the title is probably changing right now, but the title that's been announced so far is The Muse of Nightmares. And it's a story of, well, in a nutshell, there's been a war between gods and men won. And men put all the gods to death, including their children who were half human. The gods had bastard children with the humans, and the humans, victors, slaughtered everybody, except there were 5 children who have survived in hiding. So they're the half-caste bastard children of the gods hiding, and their sanctuary is not going to be so safe anymore. So they're about to be discovered, and that's the story. And the main character so far is a librarian from another city. He's a young man who's a librarian, and I really love him right now. He's really different from Akiva. He's not a warrior, and he's got a very open heart, very, very different kind of character. So it's fun. Yeah.
Muchas gracias por compartir eso, suena súper increíble, de verdad. Y pues no sé, aquí, o sea, tenemos muchas personas y no sé si alguien quiere hacerle alguna pregunta a Laini. No sé si un voluntario puede ayudarnos con el micrófono para pasarlo. ¿Sí? ¿Les van a pasar el micrófono a los que levanten la mano? Allá hay. Acá. Okay.
Bueno, okay. Bueno, me encantaron tus libros y mi pregunta es, el final siento que está como abierto para que pueda haber una continuación. Y la verdad es que
No spoilers. Yeah.
Me encantaron, ¿cómo se dice? Los personajes de Siri y Liraz. No sé si piensas escribir otra historia o hacer como un spin-off y hacer una historia de Siri y Liraz después.
Well, the ending is the ending of the story. But I do see that there could be another book about the next war that is to come. I don't think that Karu and Akiva would be the heroes of that book. But I don't know. It's possible. But I would like to write some shorter things if I could. Like, I would love to write a novella about Mick and Susanna's wedding. So I think we'll probably see more of the other characters in this small way like that, if not in a novel. And who knows, I might totally want to write another book about them someday. I am not right now. But thank you for asking.
Susana y Mick van a tener hijos.
I think it's a miracle they haven't had children already. Yeah, I think so. I like to think they'll all have, I don't know if they will have children, in a book, but I'd like to think they all have, a nice semi-normal future ahead of them. Yeah.
El señor de Crisanto, la mano.
Maybe they'll be the stars of the next book.
Hola, Laini. Antes que nada, qué gusto conocerte en persona. Y bueno, mi pregunta tal vez sea muy simple, pero lo he querido saber desde que leí el primer libro. ¿Tu cabello es producto de un deseo?
It's all what a product of a wish. I don't understand. Is what is what a product of a wish? Oh, the hair. Oh, I wish it was. That is a wish fulfillment as well, because yeah, it would be really nice if that were true and I didn't have to go to the salon every 6 or 7 weeks. It's a little bit of a hassle, but yeah, I wish, man, I do want a wish necklace. There would be so many, it would just make life so much easier. It would make us lazy though. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Antes que nada, quiero decirte que es un sueño hecho realidad verte. Vengo del sur de mi país porque quiero preguntarte si en algún momento no pasó por tu mente guardar el espíritu de Brimstone. Yo leía, iba avanzando y de repente me encontraba yo en ciertos momentos del libro que yo decía, ahí viene, ahí está el alma, ahí está, pero no, terminó el libro y yo, necesitamos que reviva Brimstone.
Oh no! Oh no, spoilers. Wait, no, I'm not saying I'm giving spoilers, but you just, who hasn't finished the series? Sorry about that. I know there's a lot of sorrow for Brimstone, but you know, one of the things that has to happen in books for young people about young people is that they have to be left to their own devices. It's very, very sad, but it's also so common. I think that in my household, my 6-year-old daughter, when we're talking about a story, a fairy tale or a book, Harry Potter, for example, when she asks, does the normal thing happen? She means, do their parents die? Because in all books for young people, it seems like the parents die so that the child has to use their own resources. And I mean, I think that was very true of Carew. But also for me, Brimstone, he didn't want to still be alive. He was way, way, way past wanting to, his life was an endless, being alive for him was a huge sacrifice. He was way past wanting to be alive. So I think for him, what's best for him is he's tired and done. And so it was more, I think it would be more tragic to bring him back, if anything, you know. I mean, I really think immortality, true immortality would be a terrible burden, especially if you had to spend your immortality the way he did. And I really feel that was the only solution for Brimstone. And as sad as it is, sometimes stories need that, you know. And if you start going back on, if you start, I mean, even if you don't have a story that involves resurrection and you start bringing characters back to life, there's a risk that the readers will never believe anything you do again, because you always think, like a soap opera, you can just undo it like that. So I think it's really important that when people die, they really die. You know, maybe not always, but in a story with resurrection, if you use that all the time, then no one would ever believe that anyone was really dead, and you wouldn't feel the weight of consequence. We're talking about a war story, and you have to believe that death is death, or else it doesn't really have any tragedy or consequence to it. So it was important to me that that be how it is. Yeah.
Nada más, antes de otra pregunta, ya que estamos hablando del spoiler de Brimstone, yo sí quería saber, no, lo que ya dijimos, que si no te hubiera gustado que en el primer libro Brimstone se despidiera de Carew y viceversa. Eso fue lo que más me dolió a mí, que realmente no hubo una despedida. Yeah.
I mean,
El espíritu.
what's happening? Well, he didn't know it was goodbye. I mean, that happens, right? I mean, you don't always get to say goodbye. He found a way, didn't he? Yeah. I mean, I mean, you guys wouldn't really want a book where everything is happy all the time. That would be so boring. No, I mean, it's hard, and it's hard to write. It's hard to give characters these fates sometimes. And I know there's one character in particular that my fans in Mexico are always very upset at me about. I just want to tell you, the only people who ever tweet me about the death of this other character are in Mexico. And like all the time I get, how could you? And you probably know who I'm talking about. Yeah. And that was really, I mean, I don't want to make light of it. It was really hard to do. And sometimes you do think, maybe I could let him live or whatever. But I actually think overall, I was incredibly merciful in the series, Yeah. I mean, look at book 3. I mean, really, not to spoil, but I think it's a very merciful ending.
Hola. Me encantan tus libros, soy una gran fan, me encanta cómo escribes y te quería preguntar, o sea, el proceso de escritura supongo que es muy difícil. ¿Hubo momentos en los que escribías una escena que tenías que parar o lloraste o tuviste una reacción que no esperabas? Porque tienes escenas muy fuertes y pues quería ver cuáles eran tus reacciones en privado.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there definitely are. There are moments that are really hard to write. There's a scene in Days of Blood and Starlight at the end that was really difficult to write. And I do get a lot of email about that from readers who think it shouldn't have happened. But again, I'm just trying to, I'm never doing anything gratuitously. I'm always trying to think what would really happen in this situation. And sometimes the answer isn't what you want it to be, but I'm also trying to keep readers really invested. And so I don't know, I think there's some reference in the books to there's an ancient curse, it's a curse, may you live in interesting times, because interesting usually does not mean peaceful and easy. And so, to write a compelling book, a lot of these hard things have to happen. And it's interesting too, because the thing that we love about fantasy and reading fantasy books is not, we might love the color and the whimsy and the magic and the wishes and the blue hair and things like that. But what really gets us is the idea of living through such dangerous, fraught times and finding in ourselves some power to make change. And so, you ask yourself, do you really want to have Karu's life? Do you really want to have that hardship? Maybe not. But it's really powerful as a reader of fantasy to be able to have more power than we have in our ordinary lives and to experience that vicariously. And so, again, if it was all happy and cheerful, I don't think you would read it. Yeah.
Bueno, es un gusto conocerte, Laini. Yo te escribí en tu página que vinieras a Monterrey. Gracias por escuchar mis plegarias. Y mi pregunta es más sobre la película.
You're welcome.
Sobre la película, sé que no puedes dar ningún spoiler ni nada, pero sobre tu punto de vista, me gustaría saber qué actores te gustaría que personificaran a Karu, a Kiva, Brimstone, Susana, etcétera, según como tú quisieras.
Yeah. I really don't know. There's been a lot of names that have come up, but it's all sort of meaningless. And it's hard for me to say if I had an ideal person, because that would be impolitic of me. If I say somebody and then in 2 months, somebody else is interested, it would be smart of me to say that on the record. But I think it's difficult casting because, I think that any studio would feel that it has to be a name actress to play Karu, and there aren't very many name actresses of that age group. There's only a handful that really get people to come to the box office, you know. So I don't know. It's really a hard question. And then for Akiva, it's always been difficult because who really is beautiful enough to be Akiva? I think it's a horrible thing for a writer to do, to like write a character that's so beautiful that no matter how good looking the actor is, people will be like, oh, no way, he's not good looking enough, you know? So yeah, and it's hard. I'm sorry, it's a terribly boring answer, but I have been advised not to be more specific. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Karu.
Can I ask this question in English? I don't know how to make it in Spanish or something.
Yes, please.
Well, I want to ask you something really, really specific. When you describe how Brimstone make all the cameras, all the guys, you describe it that you used precious stone for the character, to build strength and to build courage and some things like that. And the teeth were for, for physical structure. But I have this question in which Thiago always have blue eyes, like striking eyes, blue eyes. And how Brimstone make that? How was like, yeah, this guy is going to have blue eyes?
Honestly, I am not a resurrectionist, so no, I mean, at some point in Days of Blood and Starlight, I tried to write a more detailed description of it, and it just slowed the book down so much that I took it out, and I never made a chart, exactly how you make a chimera, so I don't know. But I'm sure Brimstone and Karu know.
Well, I'm trying. Brimstone didn't tell me how to do it, so I'm trying to remember that.
Reconstruct it?
Yeah, reconstruct him. Not Thiago, just someone else as handsome as he is.
Okay. Yeah, no, don't make Thiago, please. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it would be really fun to really develop the system completely for like, in like an app or something like that, where you can design your own chimera. That would be so fun. But I have not got the technical ability to do that. So, yeah.
Well, thanks. If I make one, I'm going to send it to you.
Yeah, let me know if you figure it out.
Yeah, thanks.
That'd be so fun. Yeah. Bueno. Is it not working?
Bueno, muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Ana Herrera. Realmente no tengo ninguna pregunta. Simplemente quería platicar mi experiencia. El año pasado estuve internada en el hospital. Tenía muchas preocupaciones, muchos dolores. Y una de las cosas que me ayudó para olvidarme del lugar en el que estaba fue tu libro. El primero, Hija de Humo y Hueso. Me olvidé completamente de dolores, de medicamentos, de todas esas presiones que tiene uno cuando está en el hospital. Fueron días internada, aislada completamente, y a un esposo me llevó el libro, y yo lo estaba leyendo, y él de repente me hablaba, y yo, espérate, es que creo que ya se conocen, y cosas así. Entonces, era bien, es maravilloso realmente agarrar un libro y volar. O sea, irte completamente del lugar en el que estás y sumergirte y ver los personajes y casi sentir lo que sienten y todo eso. Entonces, estoy muy emocionada y estoy muy agradecida contigo y con los organizadores por estar aquí. Entonces, gracias, más que nada, eso es lo que quería decir.
Well, thank you very much. It's so nice to hear. I mean, that's really, it really is amazing to hear that it helped you during that time, and I thank you so much. And it's great to be here. Really, I'm so happy to be able to come to Mexico. I really haven't had any experience anywhere in the world like I have with the fans here. So it's amazing for me. Thank you guys. Yeah.
Hola, Laini. También quisiera agradecerte por haber creado esta maravillosa trilogía. Me ha encantado. Y una de mis dudas es cómo es que se te ocurrieron esos nombres tan hermosos y curiosos, porque no son comunes de escuchar y son muy bonitos. Y quisiera ver de dónde sacaste tú esa imaginación o de dónde los escuchaste, si son traducciones de algún otro idioma como lo es el de Eretz. Entonces quisiera que me respondieras esa duda, por favor. Y muchas gracias por estar aquí.
Yeah, no, I love coming up with names, and thank you. I usually, I always have a notebook for every book I'm writing, or 2 or 3, and I'll keep several pages where I just add names if I come across them. Honestly, there was some chimera that were named after people I met on Twitter. And I want to say one of the chimera was a fan from Mexico, and I can't think of her name right now, but I met her in Mexico City. So I stole her name. But so I keep a list like that, but I also really look for inspiration for names, and I'll choose a place or a culture, and I'll look at their language and the maps, because city names often in, maybe in the Middle East or somewhere will have really cool sounding words. There'll be villages, not cities that people would have heard of outside that region. So I can use them and nobody knows that, that it's a place. And then they have this cultural cohesiveness that sounds like they belong, as part of one language, because they do come from one language. I looked a little bit at the Berber language of North Africa, where, where Morocco is. And Ziri, for example, means moonlight in that language. Amzalag, one of the chimera, is also from Amazigh, the Berber language. So I like looking for places like that. The name Karoo actually came from my best friend. Her aunt and uncle were hippies, and when they got married, they dumped both of their own last names and invented a new last name for themselves, and it was Karoo. And I just liked the name, and so that day when I started writing Karoo, it just became her name, and it sounded always like a name that could mean something in another language, so it was perfect. Akiva was hard, to come up with like a name that was just right for him, that sounded really strong and was cool, but had the right, and I was using Hebrew for the seraphim. All the seraph names come from, or sound like they come from Hebrew. So, I mean, I just pull from a lot of different sources, and it's a challenge because fantasy names can get really unwieldy and long and awkward. So I was looking for something that sounds like, like a real name. So, yeah. Thank you. We only have 5 minutes left. 5 minutes. So maybe a couple of questions we can solve it. Yeah.
Laini, primero que nada quiero decirte que me gusta mucho la manera en la que escribes y que quisiera hacerte 2 preguntas. No sé si puedas responderme la primera, pero ¿qué fue lo que sucedió con los dioses estrella? O se supone que al final del libro esa fue la duda que me quedó, que se fueron formando.
Oh, no spoilers.
Lo siento. Y la segunda, no sé si, bueno, también lo siento, pero es la duda que me queda, ¿por qué fue que murió? Lo siento, pero es la duda que tengo. Que la muerte de Azael.
I'm sorry. If you ask me, I don't want to go into too spoilery details anymore. I'm sorry. But maybe if you ask me on Twitter, maybe I'll be able to answer, maybe not. I don't know. Sorry. Yeah.
Igual, muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Aquí conocer.
Yeah.
Well, here, Laini, here.
Oh, really?
Laini, well, I just have one question.
Where am I looking? Okay,
hi. Well, are you thinking of a 4th part of the books?
I would like to write a 4th part.
Yeah?
Mm.
Well, I have the book, so if you want to, if you like to sign it to the books, yeah. See. Thank you.
Yeah, as I was writing the third book, the story began to develop, and it began to seem really like there could be this other story. And I know I would like to write it, but it'll have to sort of grow in the back of my mind for a while. And hopefully I will be able to tell that. Yeah. There's an exodus happening. Get in the sideline, yeah. Yeah.
Hola. Aquí. Hola, Laini. Quería preguntarte, ya que muchos de aquí a lo mejor escriben, yo escribo, y me gustaría preguntarte cómo fue que tú decidiste que querías escribir, cómo fue que dijiste yo quiero escribir para tu vida, bueno, a lo mejor, pero pues sí, esa es la pregunta que tengo.
Yeah, I mean, I've always known I wanted to be a writer since I was a little kid. And there was a long time, after university when I came across, confronted the reality that if I want to be a writer, I have to do it and make it happen and do it myself. And all of a sudden after university, there's that but how do I do that? And it was really, really terrifying. And also I hadn't yet found my voice as a writer. And so I stopped writing for a while, for 10 years maybe. And I went to art school and became an illustrator instead. And really in my mind, I knew that someday I would get back to writing, but really I know now it was all just avoidance because I have a lot of creative issues with perfectionism, and writing is really hard for me. I'm constantly having to drive myself forward. My tendency is to want to just make everything perfect, and you can stay forever doing that and never finish anything. And I did that for a long time. And so finally I just I think it became more painful not to do it than it was painful to do it. And that, I think, is a really important turning point. And so I finished my first novel. I finally realized if I'm going to do it, other people are finishing novels all the time. Surely I can at least finish it. And I did. And so, I mean, not to make it sound easy, it was really hard. It took me a few years. And I also started going to writers' conferences and meeting people and really learning about the industry and that it is a job and that it did begin to seem possible. And so then after that, I was really lucky. I mean, going to conferences, I met my agent. And then when I was ready to submit my book, she submitted it, and it was a combination of luck and work, I guess. But I encourage anyone who wants to be a writer, you have to, if you want a creative career, whether it's a writer or an artist or a musician, it takes 100%, or at least 90%. So you can't have a backup plan, like a job. You're not going to go to university to become an accountant and think that you're going to write on the weekends. I mean, you can do it, but it's not, it's going to be so much harder. If you really have a dream, then you have to put everything into it. Yeah, that's what I think.
Agradecemos a nuestros invitados a nombre del Tecnológico de Monterrey por su valiosa participación. Gracias también a todos los asistentes por su presencia. Los invitamos a que continúen disfrutando los eventos del programa cultural de la 25ª Feria Internacional del Libro Monterrey 2015. Que tengan ustedes muy buenas tardes.
Are you doing the tongue thing? No.